This is an absolute steal for the Orlando Magic, as they could potentially add a player that could improve their team, unlike what they did in last year's free agency period / off-season period. Except for Tristan da Silva, this team pretty much just ran it back. This year, they have the opportunity, and it is being rumored or being suggested that they should try to make a move for Sacramento Kings Malik Monk. Guys, welcome to Magic Digest. I'm your host, Patrick Previty. This is your one-stop shop for Orlando Magic basketball content here on YouTube. Now, 70.8% of you guys who are watching these videos are not subscribed, so make sure to join the 29.2% that are subscribed, who are watching regularly. It is the easiest and best way to help the channel out here, and I appreciate everybody who is supporting through the off season and beyond here at Magic Digest. Okay, so this comes from an article that was published by the OrlandoMagicDaily.com, and they are talking about the Game Theory podcast and the exact deal that they potentially pitched. Now, they had several different options for the Magic, but they settled on Jonathan Isaac, Jet Howard, a first-round pick, which was the number 16 pick for Malik Monk, as the best potential offer, maybe all around. And this is something that I think is really interesting, because this, obviously, as it says here on the screenshot, that there was at least a hint that the Magic were interested in him last year, and they could easily make a deal for Monk and still maintain flexibility for another deal in the future. We know that this team is going through a bit of a transition point right now, because the cap isn't as flexible as it was last offseason. It's not anywhere near that, and it's getting to a point where this team has to be smart with the money that they spend, who they invest in, and what kind of players that they choose to add to this roster around Jalen Suggs, Paolo Banchero, and Franz Wagner. All three of those guys are either already paid or they are going to be paid. So Paolo Banchero specifically going to be paid. So we know that we're going to have to build this team meticulously and in a smart manner. And I think that a player like Malik Monk, who isn't as expensive as maybe some of the other players that we have talked about so far in the offseason, would definitely be a very good fit. Now, he did recently just sign a deal, but this team just signed KCP to a deal. So he's getting paid about $77 million over the next handful of years. And if we kind of trade out that, now KCP's not involved in this, but still would have been able to, we still should be able to afford that, considering we would trade away Jonathan Isaac and Jet Howard. Maybe there's a deal that's been done where we move on from KCP. If in this next coming year you don't really know what KCP is going to be, we can always get off of that, and he can end up going somewhere else, and it's just a dud. It is what it is. He's getting paid like $20 to $22 million this season, so it is what it is with that. If it fails, it fails, but the long-term stuff for Malik Monk aren't exactly like strapping this team to salary cap hell in a sense. So it still would be a decent deal, even though he's $77 million. So much cheaper than what we've seen. Here's the rundown on what he was able to do this past year. 17 points per game for the Sacramento Kings, 5.6 assists, 3.8 rebounds. Still shot pretty decent from three, just under 33%. But he has that gravity. He has that level of he can hit his shots. 82% of his threes are assisted, so he's more of a catch-and-shoot guy for sure. 45.6% of all of his shots are threes, so when we look at that field goal percentage down at the 44% range, just got to recognize that he shoots a ton of threes. 27 years old, so he's still on the younger side. Fits the timeline that the Magic would be potentially trying to win a championship with, and his contract fits that as well. Now, let's get into exactly what the hosts of this podcast, the Game Theory podcast, again, shout out, said about Malik Monk. This is Bryce Simon. He said, I think he fits perfectly in the hierarchy of ball handlers for them, in terms of he doesn't have to have it, but he can do whatever, or he can do it whenever Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner are off the floor, need a break. He's going to make some of that usage off of them. Okay, or take some of the usage off of them. Excuse me, guys. That was a rough read, but you get what I'm trying to say here. So he has that ability to come off the bench and to score the basketball. He is a player that can play off ball, as we saw from some of his shooting splits, and he can play also with Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner. He fits at that two-guard position, I think, very well with Jalen Suggs, and I think defensively he's long, and we can get some of that versatility that could protect him as far as how he is defensively. So we protect him, and then at the same time, it doesn't destroy the team defense. I think it's a very good fit as far as offense and defense is concerned. Now, the co-host also said something. Sam Facini. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. I know that Malik's shooting is roller coastery, let's call it. But he still gets guarded out there. In his last 5 years, he's shot 36% from three. He's a shot creator. He's happy to be a sixth man. We've seen it throughout the course of his career. If you start Jalen Suggs and KCP and then you bring Monk off the bench and he closes games for you, that's a role that works. This is my favorite deal that I've seen so far. So as I mentioned, talking a little bit about getting off of KCP in the future, just from the salary cap perspective, he does still work with having KCP on this roster, which I understand it might feel like a carbon copy paste kind of thing, where we got KCP in the last offseason, now we're going to get Malik Monk, or just try our luck with two very similar players. I don't really think it's that. I think that they can play well together, and they can, hopefully, if you insert Malik Monk onto this roster, you take back KCP's minutes a lot, and you have a couple guys who are essentially splitting minutes, but one is starting, and there's no difference essentially. One is leading the second unit. That's what you have him on the bench for, and that can bring this offense a different wrinkle that we didn't have before. Now, I'm very glad that he brought up the shooting splits, because obviously his shooting, just when you strictly look at the numbers, aren't as on point as maybe some of the other guys that we have also talked about in the offseason. So while he's not as expensive, maybe he's not as good of a shooter as some of the other players that we've talked about, but it should still be recognized that he's definitely got an ability to make a shot, and he's got that nice ability to lead the second unit and create a different shot. And Sacramento was just a disaster this season. They were nowhere even near where they needed to be and where they wanted to be. Obviously, changing coaches, trading De'Aaron Fox. Sabonis is probably, I don't know, he might end up being on his way out here in the near future. Everything has fallen apart for them. But for him to still get his numbers, still have good shooting percentages from this past season, I think is a really good sign and something that's positive, and I think would fit the Orlando Magic going forward. Obviously, we're going to have to be looking at whether or not they want to give up a guy like Jett Howard or a guy like Jonathan Isaac. I think Jonathan Isaac has been a staple for this organization for a lot of years, and he's got a descending contract, so that is a very valuable piece to a team like the Kings, who might be, rebuilding, or it could also be a very valuable piece to a team looking for a role player that is trying to compete as well. Now, you would think that the Magic are a team looking for a role player trying to compete right now, so that's why they would keep Jonathan Isaac. It's a very valuable contract considering if he's healthy. So now, do you want to give that up? Do you want to give up Jett Howard? Is it time to pull the plug on that? Maybe so. And then, is the number 16 pick also worth it? Probably in this sort of trade, maybe you would rather give up the 25th pick and Jett Howard and Jonathan Isaac. That might make it a more fair deal. I think it could be a little bit lopsided towards the Kings in that aspect, but you got to also think about the salary cap and a lot of these separate deals. Jonathan Isaac's getting paid, somewhere around, I think he's getting paid $15 million this year, somewhere around there. I'd have to check the actual number. Jett Howard, obviously, on that rookie deal, so not getting paid a ton, but trying to cover it as much as you possibly can. Maybe another player or two could have been interchanged into this deal, but I think it's very interesting. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Is this a trade that you would do for Malik Monk? What would you tweak about the deal too? I think it's very interesting. Is this a player that you also want to see the Magic pursue in this upcoming summer? But as always, I'll see you guys next time with more Orlando Magic basketball content.